Hi everyone, welcome to Identity, a podcast about decentralized identity. My name's Nick Lambert, I'm the CEO of Doc Labs. I'm very pleased to be joined today by Marc Minnee, who is the CEO of Ovrhd. Thanks for hopping on with us, Marc. Really appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me, Nick.
No problem. And also we have Francisco, who is head of content at Doc on the podcast as well. So thanks for jumping on, Francisco.
Hi, Nick. Hi, Marc. Hi, everyone.
Yeah, so we'll get straight into it. So Doc has been working alongside Marc in kind of different forms for a short time now. And we thought it'd be great to bring Marc onto Identity, really to talk about his experience and how they see the world of identity. So Marc, maybe you can kick us off. Can you let us know from your perspective, what is self-sovereign identity?
Yeah, well, to me, it's more like a statement or a movement than there's actually a definition around that. For me, self-sovereign identity is being able as a person to, edit or instantiate my own digital representative and even also multiple digital representatives of myself, because I have a working life, I have a private life, I have a sports life maybe, and a party life. You don't know. Because there are several identities you can have in the world. And for instance, for my professional life, I would like to have a digital representative of myself that focuses on my achievements or my portfolio or my reputation, building out a digital resume, as you will. So I think the most important part of the self-sovereignty of identity is being able to express yourself in a digital way that belongs to you and that you can decide for yourself what kind of attributes are around that kind of digital identity that you want to have in that specific world or in these specific relations you want to have towards other organizations, for instance. I want to have a different relationship with my wife than I have with my work. And that you can, decide for yourself what kind of attributes are around your digital identity. So it's more about attributes and the way you relate to other organizations or to other people than that, let's say, for instance, you, as an individual, you get a digital identity stamped or instantiated by your government. I think that's not the same.
Yeah.
And for me, this is the real part of self-sovereign identity, that you as a person or as yourself can instantiate your own digital representative.
I think that's a good point, because I think when you talk to people that are maybe not in the space about what identity is or digital identity is, it's the kind of common assumption seems to be that you have one and that's all that you have, because maybe that's what we've been used to in an offline sense. But as you rightly point out, Marc, we all have many lives and we live in basically contexts. And so why should your identities not also fit in with that paradigm as well? So yeah, that's a really interesting kind of way to think about it as well. And historically, of course, identity has typically been controlled by large organizations, whether they are governments or whether we're thinking about identity as identifiers issued by kind of large tech companies historically, like Google and things like that, where they kind of grant you access to their data to your data on their systems. So identifiers also exist in that context as well. And so we can start to think about how we can use a self-sovereign identity that the individual controls to access these systems as well. But yeah, no, definitely agree with what you're saying there, and I very much liked your answer.
Marc, I really liked your explanation on SSI. For someone who's never heard of SSI, what does it look like in the everyday life? Let's say I have with me right now a digital identity based on sovereign identity principles. What does that look like, and what can I do with it?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, we're doing a lot of projects already with that. So basically, what you carry around is your personal data wallet. Just like you have already a wallet on your phone, like Apple Pay or Google Pay. About tickets are already in your wallet. If you an Eventbrite ticket, you can save in your wallet at your smartphone. Basically, it's the same procedure. You hold a personal data wallet. And what that means is that you collect your verifiable credentials, so credentials being issued to you by another organization or by your friends, could be equally valid. You hold that in your phone. And once you are going to be involved in some sort of an application process or some sort of an entry process, you can just show your personal data wallet. You can scan a QR code from the website of the organization that wants some information from you. With that scan, this organization wants from you a certain type of verifiable credential in order to check if you're eligible of entering the process or entering basically an entry ticket, it would be. So the whole idea is that by scanning this QR code in your same personal data wallet on your phone, there is some sort of message popping up saying this organization wants this credential from your wallet. Are you willing to share this with that organization in order to be eligible for entering this organization? And then you can, of course, deny that or allow it. And then if you allow it, then this credential is being transferred to the organizational website. This website is checking underneath that's where we need the trust network for. So there's a backend system and saying that, okay, once I have a link to from this verifiable credential to my registry, I can see that this credential is being issued according to my standards, according to this organization, to this government. Driver's license could also be a verifiable credential. And I can verify that this credential is still valid and it's issued by the right party. So on the basis of that matter, I can, give this person entrance. So the checking process is all in the backend to the original issuing party and see if it's still valid. So what's important here is that, of course, you hold these credentials in your wallet, but a credential can be revoked by the organization that has been issued this in the first place. So, for instance, also a diploma credential in your career wallet could be set invalid from the original issuing party if there has been some sort of a fraud being experienced or something like that. So the idea is a credential is not really in your possession. It's really being issued to you for being eligible for something in the future.
I think it's an interesting point. Yeah, sorry, Mark, I was going to say, what you described there is excellent. And I think what it gets you is trying to, I think for this technology to really achieve mainstream adoption, it needs to be as easy to use as the tools that we're all used to using today. Like we mentioned, phones and Apple Pay and things of that nature, and having these digital wallets, it needs to be a similar experience, but behind the scenes, the kind of back end of the technology exists, that we can actually trust the data, because there's digitally signed every step of the way.
Yeah.
So I think that's going to be key to getting adoption.
It's exactly what you're saying, Nick. So this is why I'm trying to build out a trust network rather than focusing on get a lot of credentials in your wallet, because it really starts by trusting the issuing parties.
Yeah, exactly.
Fantastic.
when we first got to know Ovrhd, you guys were not too far after having won the very prestigious Odyssey Momentum Hackathon, and which is a great achievement. I mean, it still kind of seems to have gone quite metaversy in the last few years. I guess forced to maybe by COVID pandemics and things like that. But you had a really, really interesting entry, which is Conscious Cities, Driving Adoption of Living Labs. Can you tell us a little bit more about that project, please?
Yeah, as we interpreted the project at first sight, I was thinking about, okay, conscious cities. What means conscious to you? It's about the city of The Hague. I'm not living far from The Hague, so I know the city quite well. And what they want to achieve is they want to get more citizens involved in the policy making of the city itself. It's quite a hard job to do. So the consciousness of the city is really dependent on their citizens or inhabitants doing stuff and monitoring this kind of stuff. And instead of, focusing on, let's say, the bad part of being a conscious city is that you can, keep a tab on all your inhabitants or, build some sort of surveillance system on it. Because as a matter of fact, the other winner of the other track of Conscious City had that kind of stuff in it, like, putting cameras everywhere and seeing how the crowd is behaving. We took a different perspective on what we called crowd control, and even crowd control itself is, of course, suspect in its own sense, because nobody wants to be controlled, and especially not by governments, at least in our part of Europe or in our part of the world, I would say. So we took the perspective of, okay, what does consciousness mean from a decentralized perspective, from a citizen's perspective? How do I, as an individual, can contribute to the consciousness of the city of The Hague? And we approached the project by doing some sort of a simulation of the beachfront of The Hague. That's the neighborhood of, or we call it a village or a city, a part of the city. It's called Scheveningen. It's a famous beach resort of The Hague or of the Netherlands itself. And we said, okay, there are lots of activities running around, so maybe we can simulate some sort of a pleasure dome, pleasure park, and see how people would behave in a sense that we can control the amount of crowdiness in certain spots. So what we did is we simulated the environment by making use of a what was it called, the Roller Coaster Tycoon 2 game. So we made a whole. We had quite a great UX guy in our team, and so we would like to simulate what would happen if you can perform crowd control by incentivizing people individually, by giving out tokens, because we are all, of course, blockchain oriented, and maybe do some sort of a combination of verifiable credential, the self-sovereignty of identity, and tokens. For instance, if there is one place that is very crowded, then you can maybe, incentivize people to go away from that spot by raising ticket prices for that part of it. Crowd control does have a very negative connotation because it's related to surveillance state, that kind of stuff. But the nice thing is, if you want to be conscious as a city and still want to, have your citizens not being watched upon, you need to have some kind of a solution that your citizens are willing to give you some information in order to be conscious. And then you need to have some kind of an incentive system in place that citizens are freely willing to share information with you. And I think the aspect of self-sovereign identity is really laying a base for that, because it's dependent on the citizens what they want to share with you. And if you, for instance, every process or everything, every transaction-related process you can think of, if you ask permission from your citizen, okay, can I have this piece of information for you because then I can improve my service to you? I think citizens are willing to give that to you, as long as they know that what you are using it for. And the main part of self-sovereignty is about letting the user or the citizen decide if they want to share that with you or not. And this seems like, okay, then I don't have enough information from my citizens, but if you think this through, then I once said this at some sort of a webinar or some sort of a presentation I held for privacy officers in the city of Amsterdam, so a big city. And I think they got the point once I said, if you try to focus not on the raw information you get from citizens, but on the processes you provide to your citizens, and pinpoint on the transaction aspects of that process, so not the content of the process itself or the raw information you collect, but the moment that a citizens interact with you, you get lots of interesting and valuable information from that as well. So not focusing on the content of the process, but more on the phases of the process or the phase transitions of the process. Okay, a citizen is applying for this. A citizen is being eligible. I issued a credential to that, a certain credential. So being anonymous as a citizen is great by privacy, is a great privacy preserving aspect. So as an organization or as a municipality, you shouldn't focus on keeping all that information from that citizens with you, because you have all sorts of risks involved, like data leakage, etc. It's also not allowed by GDPR standards here in Europe. But instead focus on the transactional information. I think you get much richer information, which is also privacy preserving. So basically, this is my 2 cents on that matter.
Could you also maybe, just because we talked a little bit about self-sovereign identity at the start, Mark, and you mentioned there kind of starting to add in tokens or kind of as verifiable credentials. Would you be kind enough just to give a very quick kind of 101 explainer as to what verifiable credentials are, if some of our listeners haven't caught up on that yet? Yeah, sure.
So a verifiable credential is, as you say, a credential that can be verified. And what is a credential? A credential is a kind of claim or a statement that some other guy or organizations is saying about you. So that's the main part. What I think is what the value is in a verifiable credential, because I can say to you, Nick, okay, I can verify that Nick is a great guy, something like that. But who am I to say that Nick is a great guy? It's more important that some sort of an organization or some sort of reputationable organization or guy will say that, hey, Nick is a great guy. So this is something about trust, about reputation, about other people are saying about you. So what that means is that if you can get some sort of a credential from the city of The Hague that I'm eligible to go somewhere or to participate in some sort of a project that improves the neighborhood, then this credential has a certain value because of that organization, like the city of The Hague, is saying about me. that the value is in the issuing party, as you would say.
Right.
So the issuing party, City of The Hague, is giving me a credential that makes me eligible to participate in certain things. And because the City of The Hague is saying that about me, some other guy or some other organization that is, let's say, is looking at that credential and say, okay, who are you to be eligible for that? I can show that, and I'm saying the City of The Hague says that I am eligible for that, and that other party, which we can call the verifier, will have trust in the City of The Hague having issued that credential to me. So the trust is not coming from me. So the verifier is not trusting me. The verifier is trusting the City of The Hague that they say something about me for being eligible for that.
Yeah.
And basically, this is the triangle of issuing party, holder, the holder of the credential, and the verifier of the credential. Not necessarily trusting me, but really trusting the issuer for that credential.
Yeah. And thanks for that. And I think one of the interesting things I found about the Conscious Cities project was the governance aspect, which was, and I think like we can maybe, Francisco, we can maybe put in the kind of show notes or whatever, a link to the Ovrhd video. I think that would be really good context for kind of people that are listening along. But I think that the governance aspect, which is highlighted in the video, whereby if local people who want to renovate a theatre or, you know, knock a building down and build something else, they are able to, within the project, basically vote on which of these projects should the public money, for example, be spent in. And I think as kind of acting as a kind of lubricant for enabling citizens to take part in kind of governance and how their local area is run is extremely powerful.
Yeah, exactly. And one of the spin-offs of winning this track is that we actually did a really small pilot with the City of The Hague in a participatory budgeting kind of project. So, for instance, if you want to have something improved in your neighborhood, getting some playground built or some plants or trees grown, then you can have a verifiable credential from the City of The Hague stating that you're an inhabitant of that neighborhood, and so that you're eligible to vote on these kinds of plans being held in your neighborhood. Basically, that was the project, and it was quite successful, even on a small scale. So this is, I think, the new way to go if you want to have some sort of a conscious city or participatory city, or we call it, I think, social innovation in order for your citizens to be part of the governance of your city.
Yeah. And I think the great thing about that, when we talk about voting as well, is that, you know, if you're, then this can be entirely built into the system. So we're not talking about voting from a perspective of dragging yourself down to a polling station, taking time off work and all the stuff that voting can sometimes entail. We're talking about, you know, kind of voting online using tokens as you know, to represent proof of you as a person, proof of your right to vote, and basically being able to do everything online without leaving your desk even, which I think is really, really powerful. And amazingly, all this technology exists today and is being used to run many kind of blockchain ecosystems. I think the weird thing about it is that everyone sometimes wants the right to vote, the right to help run, like whether it's you know, blockchains or things like that. But what we see sometimes online is the turnout for voting is quite low, which is a shame. But I think that for more kind of social and personal issues, I think we'd certainly see that improve significantly. And I think what other kind of SSI, so self-sovereign identity or verifiable credentials, use cases are Ovrhd interested in? You've gone, you know, really explained the Conscious Cities one well. What others are you looking at as well, Mark, alongside that?
Yeah, actually, there are two lines of use cases I'm currently investigating because our background is government. So we have a lot of interesting parties in government space. One of them is the Dutch Education Execution Agency that's responsible for registering diploma certificates of official Dutch but also international schools and universities. And
Is
the
that
main use case,
is that sorry, just to interrupt? Is that then for students? So they would reach some like academic attainment, and then the university would then issue the whatever credential they attained out using a verifiable credential.
yeah, this is currently what I investigated this part already 4 years ago when I was first entering the space of self-sovereign identity. We made quite an impact with that. I was manager of the innovation lab over there, and we made quite an impact with this use case. So I think we have to expand on that, and I also wrote an article on that on Medium. It's called Decentralized Micro Credentialing. So what do I mean by that? Is micro credentialing is about not just, you register your diploma after 6 years of school or university or something like that, and then you have a credential stating that you earned a diploma. What you see right now, and even also in lots of people are freelancing now and playing part in some sort of a gig economy, like, going from gig to gig and doing all kinds of studying besides or next to that. So what you see happening is that lots of people, even my boys, are just not even thinking about, am I going to spend 6 years in school right now before I'm even going to work? No way. I'm going to work for myself, or I'm going to uptake freelancing. But still, of course, you need to have some sort of credentialing in order to, get eligible for doing such a project. So this is where micro credentialing comes into play. What I mean by that is you just, you can enroll in some sort of a online course from Udemy or Coursera or what have you. You can earn after 3 months or something, some sort of a software engineer, introduction to software engineering or something like that. And you can earn after 3 years a credential for, having passed that course and getting your certificate. And even that, with that certificate, you can, of course, apply for a job or apply for some sort of a freelance gig. And I think we are seeing this more and more happening. So what I'm trying to investigate now is, how can we, of course, I'm working with lots of governments and municipalities and execution agencies, government bodies, next to central government, to build out a career wallet for people that are, in the social benefit spheres.
Yeah.
That are not that they don't have a university diploma, they don't have higher education, but they do have skills. So we are going to build out some sort of a skills passport based on verifiable credentials by, uptaking a course for 3 months, being a welder, being a carpenter, that kind of skills we really need right now because our labor market is really, grinding to a halt. Because a lot of people are actually retiring right now. So we really have quite a lot of pressure on the labor market right now. And I think one way to, come to a solution for that is building out digital resumes, which consist of smaller verifiable credentials or micro credentialing. So this is one line of inquiry. And the other line has more to do with supply chains of governments, because that's, it sounds a bit like a contradictory. Do governments have supply chains? Yes, they do, because you want to apply for some sort of a service, or you want to apply for some sort of a social benefit in labor and income spheres, or social benefit spheres, social welfare, I should say. And these processes can take up quite a lot of time, because civil servants need to, or government representatives need to check up a lot of things, a lot of paperwork. Are you eligible for this? Are you eligible for that? What kind of income do you have right now? What kind of dynamics are in your income right now? And I think that verifiable credentials would come in handy if you look at it from the privacy perspective. So what do I mean by that? Is by using a verifiable credential as a ticketing system, that you can receive a ticket. It's a bit like what you have in during the 80s, the Kanban methods from Toyota, from the Japanese industries, that you can hand out a verifiable credential once you apply for a certain service, and that verifiable credential can give you access to the next phase of the process, for instance. And then you can, as an issuer, so the municipality of the government agency can issue you some sort of a dynamic verifiable credential that the status you can update each time you can, move on into the process. And that's a bit of a supply chain management kind of perspective that we, I think, in the decentralized work we want to somehow maybe solve with NFTs. But as you rightly say so, Nick, is an NFT should be tradable, and this is something you can't trade. It's belonging to you. You are the participant in this process, and this credential, this ticket, is belonging to you, and you only have to update your ticket once you progress in every phase of the application. And I think this will save us a huge amount of paperwork, a huge amount of time, and a huge amount of, control work.
Yeah.
And I think this is a real huge business case for government agencies right now.
Yeah, no, very interesting. And going back to your point on micro credentialing as well, I mean, I think, can't remember the exact figures. It's something like 80% of us, they go to university or college or some kind of further education. The job or the occupation that we move into, in 80% of cases, it's entirely different than what we studied. And I think like the notion that we would go off and we have one career and we go and we study that thing for 4, 5, 6 years, whatever it is, and then that's the entirety of what we work on for the rest of our lives, is that really very rarely happens. So I think having something like micro credentialing that allows particularly young people as well, like, to dip their toe in the water to understand, is this something that I want to spend a large chunk of my life doing? It would give them that opportunity, but also for I'm not quite a spring chicken anymore, but and I see amongst some of my friends who are maybe kind of almost like reskilling and wanting to do different things because they've done the same thing for 20 years or so. Micro credentialing gives them that benefit as well, where they can go and do something not necessarily for a really long period of time, but they can come away with some kind of academic achievement that's demonstrable, that they can give to a future employer, and that future employer can trust that credential because of who issued it, like you said in your other example. So really interesting to hear about your thoughts there. And I think micro-credentialing is going to be increasingly used as a kind of phrase and a buzzword moving forward. And of course, the supply chain use case is really interesting. And sometimes when you hear about supply chain being used with verifiable credentials, it's often within the kind of logistics side of things as well, where it can protect like high value goods or things like pharmaceuticals, where the exporter or the ultimate recipient of the shipment can know where the goods were manufactured, what was the country of origin, and which logistics firms were involved in moving that shipment, and they each digitally sign the credential, and each shipment will have its own credential. And with each of the kind of spokes in the supply chain, each signing off when the recipient gets that, they can very quickly understand exactly where that shipment's been, where it was made, and who's handled it. So that's another really good use case for it as well. But yeah, definitely kind of use in on the social side, like you mentioned, is super useful as well. Obviously, Ovrhd and Doc started working together when you started using Doc's technology. Can you let us know a little bit about how you use Doc today, Marc?
Yeah, as I mentioned, I think I started out investigating blockchain solutions. I think from 2016 on, and I saw all kinds of use cases for blockchain happening, and it's really not really taking off because it's quite complex, as a matter of fact. And you have quite a lot of technical stuff to handle. So for most of the people, it's not ripe yet to use. So what I was looking for was back in the in 2018 when I was working with the Dutch Education Execution Agency. Was okay. Are there simple tools to use to hide all this complexity of private keys, consensus mechanisms, that kind of stuff? But really, can I trust what I can show you, and is that digital verified or something like that? So I came across at the time Uport. Uport is an Ethereum-based wallet, which holds some kind of digital credential. It's a self-sovereign identity solution. I also looked at other solutions like Sovereign and that kind of stuff. And I thought, well, I think Uport is quite user-friendly. I'm not sure what it's. I think it's rebranded right now, but you also want to have some sort of a handle on. Okay, how does the whole backend of this framework is being handled, and Ethereum is on a public blockchain. It's not that fast. It's also the gas costs are quite high. So gas is, of course, what you need to pay in order to get some sort of an algorithm at the back end doing work for you, calling out some sort of smart contract for you. So I was looking at other kinds of architectures or solutions for our self-sovereign identity use cases. And I think one of my team members came across Doc, and he said, yeah, this is a solution that is really quite easy to follow, quite easy to understand. It's also built on a modern chain. It's on a substrate Polkadot chain. And it's proof of stake, which is for us a very important property of blockchains, because Bitcoin, Ethereum are proof of work, not that quite resource intensive, and proof of stake is a better model. And also modern blockchain, higher transaction throughput, that kind of properties, which are very interesting. On top of that, I was investigating Doc once. My team member said, "Okay, we have to really look into that." And I noticed that how the way you build out your API with communicating to the blockchain, to the backend, is really, really straightforward, more straightforward than other solutions I came across. So this is why where we put our money on. Okay, let's go ahead with Doc. I think we also run a validator or two with your
that's right,
within your ecosystem. And on the other hand, we still have clients that are really reluctant to use public blockchains, and it's really easy, to start out with Doc on your private blockchain, on, as you will, on a consortium chain, if you run a few nodes with organizations you trust, and especially for government, this could be a selling point. So this is why we use two kinds of flavors, as you would say. We use a private chain for our government projects or our government pilots. And we can, of course, use the public chain for organizations that are more willing to, get the scale and get the scalability, the scale they need. As a matter of fact,
efficiencies, that you would get. Yeah, I think that's interesting. I think that shows the versatility of blockchain. It's not one blockchain to rule them all. There's lots of different flavors, like you say. I also wonder, in kind of hearing you kind of talk through some of the challenges and some of the use cases where it's often the technology exists quite early on, as we find today. Like everything that we would require for conscious cities is in play today, and quite often it's needing the kind of people to catch up and the processes and the legislation to catch up with the technology, which is always just charging ahead. So I don't know if there's something we can do to kind of shorten that gap, but I suppose that's something that impacts all industries. But yeah, I mean, I really appreciate you jumping on, Mark, and taking us through what self-sovereign identity is, how you're applying verifiable credentials, and the types of industries and use cases that you're looking at kind of moving forward. So thank you very much for your time. I don't know if you guys have any more points or questions before we wrap up.
No, I think it was fantastic. I learned a lot. Thank you very much to both of you.
Okay, thanks, Francisco.
Yeah, and I really think that the use cases are endless. Once you get your head around all the stuff that we check today by using paperwork, by using all kinds of stuff, it takes up so much time. So what I'm focusing on right now is building out some sort of a trust network. So organizations building out nodes, or maybe using nodes that they trust, in order to, get this network up and running. Because the value in the credential, as I said in the beginning, is lying in the trust of the issuing party. So if we have lots of issuing parties, and we can build out that from a government perspective, from within a municipality, from within central government or something like that, build that network out to other parties willing to join that trust network, because then we can trust each other's credentials, and then we can speed up a lot of checking processes.
Yeah, here, and I hope we get to that point very soon. But thanks again for jumping on, Mark, and thanks, Francisco. Catch you guys in the next one.